Assalamu alaikum. Welcome to Sapience Institute Live. We are going to be interacting with you guys today, just like last week. We are going to have an open question and answer session dealing with the issues which are most important in the world today when it comes to atheism, liberalism, Darwinism, Scientism, feminism, and all of the other things that keep Mohammed Hijab awake, or rather his opponents awake at night. So how are you doing, Mr. Hijab?
How you doing, man?
Alhamdulillah.
Alhamdulillah, I'm not bad.
So how did you find last week's live stream?
It was good. It's good to hear, it's very important for us to get feedback because we're obviously putting out a lot of material in the week, during the week. We're filming a lot more than we're putting out.
Yeah.
So in terms of the videos, we try and put free Sapient Thought videos out every single week, but we're filming probably 9 to 12 videos a week, and so it's good in terms of feedback to get the feedback from the live audience to see what the kind of concerns are. We're kind of drawing to a close when it comes to the scientific errors narrative and responding to it. We've pretty much recorded everything that we think are the main contentions on that. So obviously, in terms of our own projects and feedback on it, it would be good to get from the viewers if they have any particular contentions that they want us to cover in the videos. That's something as well. But not just on the scientific errors narrative or the scientific miracles narrative, but also generally in terms of morality, or because that's going to be something we're going to spend a lot of time on: morality and feminism and liberalism and women's rights and so-called women's rights in Islam and those kinds of topics.
And I think it's very important that when it comes to the way that Sapience works is we decisively, inshallah, deal with one topic and then move on to another. And I don't know, I think we're pretty close to wrapping up the entire scientific miracles, errors in the Quran narrative. In a way, the narrative was already dealt with, but decisively dealing with all of the counter contentions that people try and make. Now, before we get into that, and as the audience is warming up and people are asking when they could have the link to actually join, we're going to throw it out very soon. Just before that, I just want to touch upon an important topic, right? When it comes to science, the very problem with the scientific miracles in the Quran or the scientific errors in the Quran or whatever people are trying to come up with is all of it really stems from scientism. Because what happens is science, if someone says there are, sociological problems with the Quran, right? And then you turn around and say, what do you mean? Oh, this social theorist said this, but the Quran is telling you this is how society should be framed. People won't really take that seriously because they see sociology as subjective. They see it as a human construct, a social construct, in fact. And they see that there is a lot of theory ladenness, as in the theory is coloring the data of sociology. So it wouldn't be an undercutting argument to say the Quran is undermined by some social theory. But when it comes to science, it's like, no, this is objective. So if there's a scientific contention, as if there's no theory ladenness, as if there's no uncertainty in terms of conclusions changing or interpretations of the verses or interpretations of scientific theories. So again, it comes down to scientism. So I'm going to throw out the link actually early today because we want to interact.
As you're doing that, just can you tell them what scientism means?
Very good point, Mr. Hijab. So scientism is the excessive belief in the scientific method beyond its capacity, meaning that you believe science is the be-all and the end-all. Science undermines God's existence. Science gives you certainty. Science is the only root of knowledge. And science becomes a way of actually not only looking at the natural world, but becomes an epistemic route and the only epistemic route. And that's where things get hairy. So just before we go live, just a few comments here, guys. Because last time as well, many people were trying to join the live. Many people were commenting. We usually have a certain part where people join and they're like, oh my God, it's Mohammed Hijab. Let's limit that part.
Oh my God. It's Subboor Ahmad.
Let's leave.
Especially with that long hair.
Yes. So
we both got long hair nowadays.
Yes, we do. But I think yours is
growing up.
Yours is trying to reinforce the tree of life. Okay, so let's start off with Bosnian Muslim.
Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum salam. How are you, Bosnian Muslim?
I'm very good, mashallah. How are you?
Not bad.
Alhamdulillah. Are you from Bosnia? You're in Bosnia right now?
No, I live in Germany.
Oh, you live in Germany. Okay.
I actually remember the last time I was on, you actually wanted to ask me something before I left. I don't know if you remember. Maybe that was the question.
Yes, go ahead.
So can I ask like any question? Does it have to be directed to a topic?
Well, the topic obviously at Sapience Institute is we don't deal with fiqh, we don't deal with political issues. What we do deal with is feminism, Darwinism, scientism, atheism, and related topics. So anything in regards to that will be perfectly fine, inshallah.
Well, I guess I could ask you something about, I guess, macroevolution, if that's okay. My question is this, right? I always see like atheists always like commenting about, there's so much evidence for it, right? My question generally is, why does that even contradict Islam, if it even does? Because look, if macroevolution is speciation, right? Then why does a fish becoming a monkey somehow disprove Adam's creation?
Okay, so firstly, Brother Edin, the first thing I want to do is, regardless of whether it contradicts the Quran or not, that's a different matter which we can deal with. Let's look at their claim. There's so much evidence for macroevolution, right? And if you actually ask them, what is your evidence for macroevolution? They will say, well, microevolution, because if you can walk 5 miles, you can walk 500 miles. So the essential argument is if small scale changes plus long, deep time equals massive changes over a long period of time. That's their basic argument. Now, there's some serious issues with this. The first one is the fallacy of equivocation. So what this is doing is this is equivocating two different types of processes. Microevolutionary processes cannot be equated to macroevolutionary processes. So when it comes to, okay, think of it this way. Let's Paul Nelson, who I just had on my channel.
Yeah, I saw that stream.
He gave a very good analogy. If you were watching, since you were watching, Brother Eden, he gave the analogy that, you see, when we think of Darwinian evolution, it's like a plane flying, and when the plane is flying in mid-air, you change the components of the engine, but you change them in such a way that you don't cause a disruption that the plane comes down and crashes. So there's a constraint on what's possible. That's really good. That's a really good analogy. You can't have you have a principle of continuity. You can't have let's just stop, let's just restart. No. You have that constraint throughout.
And just tell them who he is.
Yes. Very, very good point. Paul Nelson is a philosopher of biology. He is somebody who, by the way, anybody seen that very popular documentary in which Richard Dawkins is talking about aliens and maybe we were created by aliens, and this has been seen by millions of people all across the world. It's called Expelled, No Intelligence Allowed. Millions of views, and it's popular. And if you watch in that documentary, they show leading biologists and philosophers of biology who challenge Darwinian evolution. And Paul Nelson, you will see him throughout the documentary. In fact, the Discovery Institute, of which Paul is a fellow, is the one behind the documentary. And Paul Nelson is the one who made the risky prediction about 20 years ago about orphan DNA, that there is DNA which doesn't fit. Okay, let me just give I think it's worth everybody knowing. So in terms of our genome, the Darwinists will always try and link it back to some parental species, some other organisms, and going back till they have this beautiful tree. However, what Nelson's been saying for a very long time is that no, there is data there is DNA there which doesn't fit the tree. And there were some anomalous data that was coming out, which wasn't fitting the tree of life. And at that particular time, scientists said, this is a sample error, or this could be explained due to this. And they had all these type of ideas to challenge it. However, he said, no, it's going to increase exponentially. It's going to be a lot more. And that's what it turned out to be the case. So if you look at the graph, and if you go to my channel, you will see that he actually has a chart with all the data. And this is like the early 90s, the early 2000s. And then the anomalous data becomes almost, it skyrockets this way, right? So Paul Nelson, he gives the example of the engine and this type of thing. And also something else which I spoke to him about, which I think is very important, is worth noting here. Kuhn, who Hijab, myself, others have studied, he speaks about normal science and revolutionary science. So in a way, this is what me and Paul were speaking about when it comes to orphan DNA. Now, think about a revolution, the French Revolution. In terms of the French Revolution, you have the monarchy. They are the people in the castle, with the country, with the power. And then you have the revolutionaries who are saying, your system's wrong, your system's corrupt. So Kuhn used this as he used scientific paradigms. He used language which likened them to like a political paradigm. So when you have a prevailing regime, and then you have people on the outside saying, you're wrong, those are the revolutionaries. But the people who are running the regime, they are known as the ones working within the normal research framework or normal science. And what they'll do is, every time a revolutionary will say, this thing is wrong, they will try to reinterpret it in their theory. So they'll keep doing that until the pressure builds. There's so many anomalies that you have to have a paradigm shift and a revolution. So a really good example is Newtonian mechanics. There's a very, very interesting historical story here, which I think all of us should really memorize, because it's really worth understanding it. So the Newtonian worldview worked well for well over 200 years. If you predicted where is a planet going to be in 6 months from now, that's exactly where it would be if you did equations correctly. And obviously there was assumptions about time and space is fixed and this type of stuff. However, when the Newtonian worldview was used to actually predict the behavior of the planet Mercury, what happened was it was wobbling. It wasn't doing what the Newtonian worldview was saying it's going to be doing. The Newtonian model is saying it's going to be doing. So what scientists said is, okay, Newton can't be wrong. Newton's been right for so long, and we've done all this amazing. We've developed science, we've developed technologies based on Newton. There's no way he can be wrong. So they are working within normal science. So what happened is they said, well, you see, there must be a planet out there called Vulcan, and the planet must be interfering and must be causing Mercury to wobble because of its gravitational pull, right? And so that became a sort of a story which is used in science to show, and obviously Vulcan didn't exist, and Einstein came later on and showed through general relativity that time and space is flexible, and that anomalous data fitted with his theory, not with Newton's theory. But the scientific community understands they can make mistakes of the Vulcan type. They can come up with ad hoc rationalizations to fix an existing theory. Now, what it is with macroevolution or with orphan genes is the Darwinists will always find their Vulcans. They will always find their way of fitting and plugging the data. And when it comes to the issue of macroevolution, there are basic things, and I just want to raise this point, basic foundational things which are completely missing when it comes to the Darwinian explanations. For example, in 2016 at the Royal Society in London, they had a meeting between various different biologists, and the meeting was about whether Darwin is right in natural selection. Now that sounds strange because since 1859, everyone's been singing and dancing that, oh, Darwin was right. But in the Royal Society,
when?
2016.
Okay.
And the interesting thing, Hijab, about the Royal Society is the Royal Society is the oldest society in the world.
Mm-hmm.
It's the very same society in which 1858 Darwin first came to publish his theory, and then published it the next year in 1859. And they are not some religious institute, but they're having a debate whether he's right. And it was about his core mechanics, which, by the way, are supposed to explain macroevolution. But guess what? They don't even explain the origin of body plans, which is the foundational problem. So the issue really here is
this sorry, just to ask. I know I see him meant to be asking us, but now you got me interested. You know the whole third way evolution thing, with Dennis Noble and
yeah.
So is
absolutely linked.
Is he part of it?
Yes. So very good question.
Yeah.
On the third way of evolution, you're going to have people like Eva Jablanka, who believes in neo-Lamarckism. She was actually there at the conference. So these are people who they say there has to be an alternative to the Darwinian framework, and because it's not fitting the data. However, this is something very, very important, and I'm going to get Hijab to work out what the answer is here, not myself. Yeah. Oh, it's Ali Dawah.
No way.
He's actually watching, mashallah. So I got distracted.
Yeah.
Where's the marriage documentary, bro? So anyway,
I'm still in microevolutional status.
Subhanallah.
It actually is an abiogenesis. It's the starting of he just pressed click to record. Anyway, I actually forgot what I was saying. I just saw Ali Dawah.
You saw about Royal Society in 2016.
There you go.
The macro changes.
Yeah, there you go. So this whole idea that they've explained it is not right at all. In fact, and yes, I remember now what I was saying. What I was saying was, even though there's these alternatives, no matter what, they still have to go back to some sort of Darwinian framework. And I want to grill Hijab to find out why.
Oh, because of homology?
No.
Why?
Okay, even Brother Eden.
Yeah, please.
Why?
Eden, help us out here, man.
Why do they have to go back to Darwin? By the way, this is a very difficult question. I didn't work out the answer until it took me a very long time. And in fact, people like Philip Johnson and others have pointed this out in the 1990s, but it's something which is quite hard to grasp. Long story short, methodological naturalism.
All right, yeah.
Methodological naturalism is the only game in town, which means Ali's trying to distract us with his comments. So methodological naturalism is the only game in town, right? Therefore,
can you just quickly explain what it is?
No, can you explain it? Because he's distracted.
All right, so
he said marriage is evolving.
Methodological naturalism is the assumption that there's no supernatural when you're doing science.
Okay, fine. But why would that lead to a conclusion that life had to evolve with through some natural processes?
Because there's no alternative.
Okay, then why do they stick with Darwinism and not something else?
Yeah, that's a good question. Why do they have to stick to Darwinism and not something else? Because you could technically have an evolution that's not Darwinism and would still.
Yes, you can. Yeah. But yes, exactly. Yeah. Now, good.
Yeah.
But why do they stick to Darwinism?
I don't know.
Okay, because amongst the other models, like, for example, natural genetic engineering
or neo-Lamarckism.
Yeah. The problem is they open up the door closer to theistic compatibilities.
Oh, really?
Yes. It's like natural genetic engineering, and there's gaps there.
Right.
With Darwinism, it's all encompassing.
So just as a question, neo-Lamarckism, for example. So Lamarck believed that the giraffe elongates its neck because it keeps reaching for the leaves or whatever, and then these traits are going to be inherited by the
mashallah, you've been reading, mashallah.
No, bro, I love that GCSE.
Oh, mashallah.
Back in the 1800s.
Did you start applying it to yourself?
I wanted to know why I was like
Jake Jordan in the class.
Yeah, so neo-Lamarckism.
Yes.
I'm guessing that if these traits are all hereditary, I'm trying to guess why this is more theistic or more in line with.
Okay, there's gaps.
Okay.
Yeah. So where is that coming from? that tendency.
Where is it coming from?
So you see, that's why some people thought that Lamarck's ideas were incomplete.
Right.
The thing is with Darwinism, it explains by explains I mean they have a story for everything in a purely naturalistic way.
Yeah.
But with the other ones like natural genetic engineering, where, for example, mutations are not random, they're directed. Mutations where the organism decides, okay, I need this. Yeah. All of those things, they can have more theistic implications.
I have a question.
And also Darwinism is the most simplest.
Sorry, Ed, I know that you're but I have a question. Sorry. Do you know that you were describing before, like privately, you were having a discussion about the processual view versus the gene-centered view, right? And the processual view is like that, or nature as a whole, like well-oiled machine. Yeah. And
not machine. It's a well-oiled system.
Right. Well,
because a machine is one way. Yeah.
Right. So, like for example, go back to this simple giraffe example. The leaves are higher up, and then the giraffe extends its neck, but it wouldn't be able to extend its neck unless the leaves were there, right?
Yeah.
So it's almost as if the ecology or if the surrounding determines the outcomes more so than the gene, because in the gene-centered view, it's like, is it more driving force, the gene's driving force, than it is the...
Okay.
Do you see what I'm asking?
Yes, I see what you're saying. So, okay, very good question. Yeah.
Sorry.
No. Very.
You're much more intelligent than me. So go ahead.
The thing is, the hair is turning him into a sort of Sherlock Holmes. He's asking very
definitely.
Yeah. Okay, what he's basically saying is,
Hijab
is basically saying, the gene-centered view says we adapt to the environment. The processual view says, or the other view, which is known as niche construction, says we adapt the environment to our needs.
Is that interchangeable processual?
Well, it can be. It can be, because you see, with the gene-centered view, it's like a one-way thing.
Right.
With the processual view, it's like a feedback loop.
Right.
So everything flows.
Yeah.
Now, the good thing here, the very interesting thing here, in answer to your question, is Darwinists would tell us it's about selection. It's about the selfish view, which is genes determine organisms then determine societies, and it's like one way. However, and we adapt to the environment. So the environment is fixed or not fixed, or it's forcing us to change.
Right.
Interestingly, what we've discovered for some time now is human beings and other organisms, rather than adapting to the environment, we adapt the environment to us. For example, beavers, they build dams, or humans.
Yes.
It's cold outside, rather than adapting to the environment, we adapt the environment to us. So we start building a house, we start building tables, we start having heating.
Right.
So what you're saying is a very interesting point, and yes, this is a huge thorn in the side of Darwinism.
I want to say something else as well. Tell me where you stand on this. I was reading something, The Devil's Delusion by David Belinsky some time ago.
I'm gonna have to give up my channel because Hijab is mashallah.
No, of course not. Evan, this is actually hopefully an answer to your question, but I'm going to ask him to kind of answer you right. So David Belinsky, he's actually a clip on him on YouTube talking about this. He makes similar arguments in his book, Devil's Delusion, where he talks about the transformation. And to be crude, obviously we're not talking about a cow and a whale, but he talks about the transformation of like a mammal, a land mammal like a cow, to a whale.
Yep.
And he asks this beautiful question. And the way he puts it is, I'm not. If you haven't, and if anyone hasn't seen this, you go and check this out. His name is David Belinsky, and the way he talks about the cow, I don't know if it's on YouTube or something, but it's so powerful. It requires a reaction video between me and you. It's very powerful on your channel. But basically, he says that how many transformations need to be made from a cow to become a whale? Like, let's just think about it. Is it he asked the question, he goes 10,000, 20,000, 50,000? How many transformations, right? And then he goes back to, I think, what you were saying about this whole plane and changing the engine in midair and so on like that. It's got to be movements so much, because obviously
it's constraints.
Yeah, the constraints. But here's the constraint issue becomes even more pronounced when we're talking about moving from lung to gill.
Yes.
Now think about that for a second. I mean, when I first thought about that, it really made me think the amount of faith that these Darwinians have.
Yeah.
Because you believe that a cow, now to put it really crudely, right, or a cow-like creature can eventually evolve to become like a whale-like creature.
Yeah.
And there's mutations that happened.
Yep.
How many of them have to happen? 50,000, 100,000, million, a billion, whatever it may be. But we have to believe that that happens, A, and B, that it happens in the way that you suggested. So we're talking about the plane moving in midair, but the engine
without crashing.
Yeah. So that exactly is a perfect analogy for the cow, whale transition.
I just love the way you say cow.
The cow-whale transition, right? Now, it's really powerful because the thing is, when Darwinists, or if you call them that, I'm not sure if that's what they would be called, but Darwinists, people like Richard Dawkins, or his people of his ilk, sometimes they are skeptical as well. Skeptics.
Yeah.
I don't see how you can be a Darwinian skeptic. By the way, I see that as a contradiction.
Yes.
I really do, because if you're a skeptic, what I've just described sounds a lot like religion.
Yes.
Like, I don't care who tells me that.
Yes.
You're telling me a cow transformed into a whale.
Or you even I would say, as somebody who's open to the idea of theistic evolution, right?
Yes.
Directed by Allah. That would be a possibility.
It would be,
but undirected natural selection.
That's what we're saying.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. It just doesn't make any sense.
We're not against Darwinian evolution, but we're not against all of it. Like, like he says, if it's speciation, to answer your question, speciation, adaptation, and even like I had the podcast with Abdullah Ajeri, who's like, and he was saying like animal evolution is no problem. We believe in a specific, the thing that we don't believe in is that Adam evolved. The other things.
Even with that, I think the caveat is we're open to it. Not that
we're open to it. Exactly right. Exactly. Thank you very much,
brother Subboor. I hope this isn't like off topic or anything, right?
Yeah.
When I was speaking to brother Shabir yesterday, a lot of people in the comments were saying that the question that I asked was like more something that I should ask you, and the question is basically, when they talk about abiogenesis, right, or I guess the emergence of life, then like when they have data, they draw conclusions, interpret the data, and etc. But I guess the question is why they always tend to say, okay, well, abiogenesis, it doesn't matter when we're talking about evolution. But Shabir says you have to start, you have to go to the start point and figure out how it even began to know how it continues. So if you go, if you consider. So basically saying, I don't know if you're aware of this website, but there's like this Origins website, and there's like this PhD, his name is, what was his name? I think something like Douglas Theobald or something like that. And he published this one article, like 29 evidences from macroevolution. And then Shabir was saying that, the evidence is like being interpreted in a way, that isn't like necessarily the way it should be interpreted. So
the thing is, again, it goes back to methodological naturalism, So abiogenesis is something which, if somebody really wants to know just how...
Could we just define it quickly?
Oh, sorry. So, you see, Darwinian evolution speaks about the development of life. But before development, you've got to have origin.
So moving from chemistry to biology.
Yeah, exactly. Now, the problem is, like you said, Brother Eden, you got to have both as a package. Because if you're going to say there's one origin, then that one origin is linked to the unlikelihood of chemical evolution. But if chemical evolution is much more likelier, then you'll have multiple evolutions. Multiple origins. If you have multiple origins, that totally is like a bull in a china shop of the people who come up with the genealogical tree, because it'll be like, that's exactly what Paul Nelson was saying. He was saying, if you have more than one origin, which, by the way, Ford Doolittle and Carl Woese and others who are atheists, by the way, they believe that the tree of life is redundant.
Really?
And when it comes to
tree of life, everything goes back to the single cell.
Luca, last universal common ancestor, they don't believe in that. And the three domains of life, one of them was discovered by Carl Woese. I mean, these are big people. Long story short, their whole idea of chemical evolution and going from the inorganic to the organic, if you look at all of the models, there's a guy called James Tour. He absolutely demolishes these ideas, right? However, you have to understand they still believe in them, and they have to believe in them simply because of methodological naturalism. Now, Darwin himself, and I want everyone to recognize this here, Darwin himself, he believed that the origin should have been something very, very simple. The cell would be something very like a jelly, very simple, right? It turned out to be much more complex than, in fact, it was that's why Michael Behe gave the example of the black box. You open it up and it's like a mega city. Yeah. So later, other Darwinists like Francis Crick, they started coming up with
guy that made the DNA.
Yeah, exactly. He discovered the structure of DNA, and he won the Nobel Prize for that. So he tried to solve that by saying, well, maybe panspermia can explain it. Panspermia being that life was sent down to Earth with rockets and from an advanced civilization. Where did the advanced civilization come from? Richard Dawkins was asked this because he also flirted with the idea of panspermia, and he said maybe they evolved. So the thing is, look, you can't win if methodological naturalism. What we can do is point out they have methodological naturalism, right? And it's kind of like this. So you, brother,
it's circularity, isn't it? You can't prove it with it.
Yeah, it's a circularity if they say it's not an assumption. If they say it's an assumption, we can leave them alone.
Yeah.
So, for example, if I have a debate with you, brother Eden, and we have the debate based upon you have to show me where in the Bible Jesus says he's not God. But you're not allowed to say the Bible's not reliable. You're not allowed to use the Quran. You're not allowed to use logic. You're going to lose that debate because no matter what you say, I'll always go back to something else. So we've limited all the options. So when you accept methodological naturalism, then you are always going to have Darwinism winning, regardless of how many just so stories or this or that. That's why you can never tackle Darwinism using science alone. You can never do that. You always have to go back to the philosophy of science.
Dr. Nielsen, right? Or Nelson, I don't know how to pronounce his name.
Nelson,
but does he have, what's his position on this? I'm guessing he doesn't necessarily believe in Darwinism, right?
He's an intelligent design proponent, so he challenges Darwinism. Yeah.
But he's an atheist, or?
Paul Nelson's a Christian.
Oh, he's a Christian. Okay, yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, and also I want you to say, by the way, I know Hijab loves to use fallacies against atheists, so he's going to love this particular analogy. Yeah, so these guys, whenever they come out like to challenge people like Nelson and others, atheists, they come and say, we can't take these people seriously. They believe in God. They're Christian.
Yeah.
Right? But the thing is, that's actually the, what did I call it again? The true Scotsman fallacy. Yeah. So for example, the true Scotsman fallacy is the fallacy that true Scotsmen eat oats. The true Scotsmen don't put sugar in their oats. And then someone says, yeah, but Tom, he's a true Scotsman and he puts sugar in his oats. No. But he's not a real Scotsman. Like they'll just keep changing what the.
If we're looking for people that are atheists, like I mentioned, David Belinsky is an atheist.
No, there is.
Yeah.
But here's the problem: if they are going to, if the atheists are going to discount theists because they're theists,
it's almost like the genetic fallacy.
Okay, yeah. Then we can turn around to the atheists and say, we're not going to take you seriously because you're atheists anyway. What's good for the goose is good for the gander. So what's the point? What's the point of actually using this? What's the point of having this thing about these people believe in God, or they're Christians, or they're intelligent design promoters, we can't take them seriously.
We'll break in, yeah.
There's someone break. But if someone does break in, it's going to be a live stream and then Hijab with the stick. Most fun ever.
The thing is, right? I find it very hypocritical because, like every atheist that I've come across has somehow said that, people that believe in God are always like subscribe to, God of the gaps. But I always see atheists, they basically always put a label to a mystery because, for example, I don't know if this is a good example, but the random mutations, right?
Right.
They're saying it's random, but it's just like you don't have an answer and then you're just calling it randomness. So I don't know. I find it very hypocritical. And
no, it is. It's the Darwinism of the gaps. But what I do want to do, brothers, Umar, Earth, Mehdi Raza, and Fadl Games, the player. Inshallah, we're going to bring you on as well. And we're gonna. I just realized that there's a lot more people waiting.
I really apologize if I.
No. It's not. It's not actually your questions were bringing out information which was stuck somewhere deep in here, and it really kicked off some activity in my brain. But yeah, I thought it was really interesting speaking to Brother Eden.
Thanks so much.
Join us again, inshallah.
Yeah, I just wanted to say that I really, I mentioned this like last time, but I really like appreciate so much what you brothers do, because, the more I listen to you, the more I actually realize, especially about evolution, this isn't really adding up. And when you hear like the standard narrative, it really does confuse people, and etc. So yeah, may Allah bless all of both of you and your families, and Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Brother Umar, how are you doing? Yeah, I can't hear you. You're very low, my friend. You're very low. I can't hear you, brother. What on earth is that? We can't hear you, brother. Okay, let's go to Earth. There's some audio issues with Brother Umar. Earth, how are you doing today? Okay, let's go to Mehdi Raza. Brother Mehdi, can you unmute your mic? You're talking, but your mic's muted.
It's okay now.
Yes. Okay. Assalamu alaikum, brother.
Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Brother Hijab and Brother Subboor.
Where are you calling from?
I'm calling from Lahore in Pakistan.
MashaAllah. Brilliant. Which part of Lahore?
Lahore, model town, the heart of Lahore.
Have you heard of LUMS?
Yep, the Oxford of Pakistan.
It's the Oxford of Pakistan, and Hijab actually has a talk coming up in LUMS.
When is that going to
when is that again? The email I sent, he's not been checking his emails.
No, I just need to make sure that it's in my...
Okay, by the way, I did that as a subtle reminder for him to check his commitments. But yeah, inshallah.
I'm a fan of his.
No, don't worry.
Well.
We'll do it, yeah.
Yeah.
I like his talks on political philosophy as well.
Yes, and he's going to be speaking about feminism at LUMS Religious Society, inshallah.
Doesn't say when, bro.
Everybody's there's going to be finished, A'udhu Billah.
Yeah, he hasn't got the date yet.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sorry?
The feminists are going to be finished, A'udhu Billah.
Yes. Well, if they're finished, then you say Alhamdulillah. If they're not finished, then you say Alhamdulillah. Anyway, so what's your question, Brother Mehdi?
My question is that I want to basically ask is, can the scientific arguments in the Quran, or let's just say in Abrahamic faiths, be used to counter or at least show the reality of God to atheists or non-believers or mesotheists in that regard?
I think that we have to have a sophisticated approach with it, and one of the important things that I think that Dawah is now catching on to is the changing nature of science. That science changes, okay, and this is, people don't realize that even what is referred to as scientific fact can change. The Dawah, the way it was being done in the last 20 or 30 years, didn't account for this very important fact, that what is referred to as scientific fact, that can change. Someone can say, well, this is a scientific fact, it won't change. But actually, there are things which are referred to as scientific facts which will change. So we can't put forward the idea that there's no scientific fact. There's no verse in the Quran or Hadith that goes against a scientific fact, because if a scientific fact is defined as something which doesn't change, something which can change, then there's no requirement for that to be the case. Like, that's the first thing. Things which are observable sometimes have a higher epistemic value. Like, for example, if you look at the human being, and the fact that, a very straightforward reality that the human being has eyes or something like this, or the fact that if I hold this phone and I drop it, if I let go of it, it will drop. These things will not change. But now the way I describe how that happens will change. So, for instance, theories of gravity will change depending on which time we're in, which epoch we're in. So we have to be sophisticated with this. What I think is the best way to kind of elaborate this is to say that the Quran has a unique multidimensional way of dealing with naturalistic phenomena. So when it talks about nature, for example, naturalistic phenomena, it does it in a way which people in the 7th century all the way through to the 21st century can understand, and can correlate it with a model that they have. Okay, they can correlate with a model that they have. And so obviously from that perspective, there's currency there. And we would say that the Quran, from all the ancient religions, or comparative to them, has the best propensity to do so. So, for example, if we look at the Old Testament, the argument can easily be made that the authorship is stuck in the epoch of whatever it is, century, that the Old Testament was written or codified. But the Quran seems to speak in ways which go beyond the 7th century narrative. And I think the best example of this is embryology. Like, people talk about embryology in a scientific miracle. I wouldn't put it in that language. But I think when we talk about embryology, right, in the Quran and the Sunnah, it can easily be conceived in a way which is concurrent with modern biological understandings and with like the medieval understandings of the 7th century, for example, and all that which is in between. So from that perspective, the Quran seems to have more of a propensity to speak to people in different epochs when it comes to naturalistic phenomena. And I think that we have to couch our language in language of sophistication and nuance, rather than couching the language with certainties and scientific miracles and this and that. I think that's really academically doesn't stack up. The argument will not be as potent. So from that angle, I think the multidimensional view, is very good. And you can use a few examples. And I like to use a few examples. Like, as I've just mentioned, some of the things in the embryological corpus when it comes to Islam, easily can be understood in both. Like, for example, I just filmed a video this week. There's a very famous hadith which people have understanding incorrectly, which talks about إذا على ماء الرجل, if the man's fluid dominates the woman's fluid, then the appearance will be according to that. And if the woman's fluid, dominates, etc., then the appearance will be more of the mother. People have translated this as if the woman ejaculates first. Well, that's not the correct translation, because the word for ejaculation is imna, right? And that's not mentioned in any of the alfaz of the hadith, any of the language of the hadith. The word that's mentioned, which is Ibn Hajar, he says this is the right riwayah, is the word ala, which is in the Quran, in Surah Al-Mu'minun, chapter 23, verse number 91. مَا اتَّخَذَ اللَّهُ مِنْ وَلَدٍ وَمَا كَانَ مَعَهُ مِنْ إِلَهٍ إِذًا لَذَهَبَ كُلُّ إِلَهٍ بِمَا خَلَقَ وَلَعَلَى بَعْضُهُمْ عَلَى بَعْضٍ. Ala means to dominate. So if there was more than one God, they would have tried to dominate each other. So here, this hadith is talking about fluids dominating one another. Now, we speak in the 21st century in language of dominant genes, dominant and recessive genes. It's very easy to correlate this hadith with that, extremely easily, especially when you have another hadith which talks about, the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. He's talking to a man, not some Zayd, but there was a man who came, a Sahabi who's unnamed actually in the hadith, and he had a black son. He had a black son, and then the black son, obviously he's not black himself, and his wife is not black. Otherwise, this would not have been strange for him. And he said, "How could that be the case? That he has a black, I've got a black son." And then the Prophet ﷺ, he said to him, "Look, have you got camels?" He said, "Yeah." "What color are the camels?" He said, "Red." He said, "Do you have grey camels?" He said, "Yeah." He said, "How comes?" He said, لَعَلَّهُ نَزْعَةُ عَرْقٍ. It could be because it's some kind of ancestral lineage. And the Prophet ﷺ, لَعَلَّ إِبْنَكَ هَذَا, نَزْعَةُ عَرْقٍ. He said, maybe it's because your son is also the ancestral lineage. So here you have this idea of recessive genes in modern parlance, which are kind of represented somewhere along the lineage of the family of the person. Like, for example, I'm 6'6". My mom and dad are not 6'6". Neither of them are even anywhere close to that. But some great granddad might have been 6'8", 6 or 6'7", and then I might have had the tall gene or whatever that's passed down.
Or it could be you studying Lamarckism.
Or playing for basketball or something in another life. But whatever it is, right? The point is that when you put all these hadiths together, it's easy to conclude, okay, well, this is understandable from our modern perspective. For instance, another hadith, beautiful hadith, easy, simple. The Prophet ﷺ said, the born child is not from the entirety of the fluid. Simple hadith. There's no it's clear, right?
That's why children resemble their mothers as well.
Yeah, children can resemble their mothers. It's not because it's the misunderstanding is that, because she ejaculates first. No one is saying that. It's talking about Allah. It's talking about domination. So the fluid has some components within it which dominate components within the other fluid, and we know it's a mixture of the fluids because it's nutfa amshaj. إِنَّا خَلَقْنَا الْإِنسَانَ مِنْ نُطْفَةٍ أَمْشَاجٍ نَبْتَلِيهِ فَجَعَلْنَاهُ سَمِيعًا بَصِيرًا. In chapter 76, verse number 2. We have created the human being from a mixture of fluids, so that we may test him who made him hearing and seeing. So you have this mixture of fluids, and it's not the entirety of the fluid which the child is from, because we know it's on one cell from each for the fertilization to take place. So we can actually put all of that in sequential form, and it can make sense to a 21st century audience without having to do hermeneutical acrobatics or something like that. But it would have made sense to the people in the 7th century.
That's a really nice word.
Right? You know what I mean? So it's and that's what we believe the multidimensional thing is that, look, even if you wanted to subject it to our current kind of observable understandings, it wouldn't be ridiculous to do so. Like, we can understand these ahadith in light of 21st century understandings, but what a 7th century person would have understood it in their own way, and that would have been fine for them as well. And that's the beauty and the miracle there, in the multi-dimensional and timeless nature of the Quranic discourse when it relates to naturalism. Not because of some kind of false requirement for all of the verses of nature in the Quran to match with whatever model that they have of the day. This is not the requirement.
Jazakallah khair, brother Mahdi Raza, for joining us today. Hopefully that answers your question, and inshallah you're going to see hijab at Lums University.
We don't know yet when.
Inshallah, I'll find out the time, but I'm pretty sure inshallah he'll be ruffling some feathers.
Inshallah, brother, inshallah.
He'll be ruffling.
I hope not. I hope that Pakistan, I heard it's a very religious country. What's going on?
Absolutely. So let's go to is your mic working?
Assalamu alaikum. Can you hear me?
Walaikum salam. Yeah.
Okay. I need to go fast because my dad's after me and he plays Zohar. I'm really sorry about that. So yeah. My question for you brothers is that how can I pursue my interest for philosophy as a Muslim living in the West? I really like the subject, but don't know whether I should even pursue it in the first place and how I should do it. Also, I would love some book recommendations. Jazakallah khair.
Okay, so just can you please process feedback? Okay, so thank you for asking the question. I think it's extremely important that firstly Muslims do things in the right order. So if you start something and you do the right things, but you do them in the wrong order, you're just going to cause yourself issues. So let's look at a few things. Firstly, there's no such thing as philosophy. Yeah. When it comes to you studying at Western universities, you're not studying philosophy. You're actually studying Western skepticism, which is labeled philosophy. But when you go to, say, the Islamic tradition, you'll be studying Islamic epistemology, and they'll call it Islamic philosophy. So what's happened is, it's kind of like this, yeah? Hoover, can you hoover the room, yeah? Hoover is actually a brand, but it's so successful that Hoover and vacuum cleaner is synonymous now, yeah? In the same way, Western skepticism and that epistemology is so prevalent in the world that it's just called philosophy.
In fact, just to add to this, I was reading something quite recently that, and I know it's not the same as Western skepticism, but I was reading that almost all philosophy departments in almost all Western universities describe themselves as analytic philosophical departments. They all refer to themselves in that sense. So people have to realize that when they're going into it in the West, it's a very specific school of thought, we were talking about this as well. Like if you're talking about the West, then if you go and do a search on the 20 most top 20 universities in the UK, for example, and most philosophers in those departments are going to be philosophers of the mind, either studying consciousness or something like this. They're going to be philosophers of science. Philosophers of science is popping nowadays. So consciousness, mind, philosophy of science, and then you've got a lot of philosophers that deal with ethics and those kinds of things. I reckon these three subjects are what dominate philosophy departments. And obviously they're gonna employ a lot of Western things. Now, obviously they do have. I'm not saying that like they don't have Islamic philosophers and stuff, but it's not that many in the West. It's not that many in the West.
And the other thing is that because what you're basically doing is you're entering into a field, you're entering into a world in which you're not prepared to actually answer that Western skepticism. And this is why I'm not in favor of saying to Muslims, you could just go study philosophy. I don't think that's a good idea. Hamza actually has a really good video on this somewhere online where he talks about, well, firstly, have you studied Islamic epistemology, Islamic Aqidah? No, then what's the point of doing something when you won't know how to challenge it? You won't know how to, take on its assumptions. Secondly, what's the purpose? What are you trying to achieve? What is the end goal? Is it just, okay, I like this, or is it actually, okay, I want to do dawah with it, there's a particular focus? Thirdly, do you have somebody who's grounded in Western philosophy and grounded in Islam that can help you in case you come across things that you can't solve? Because I think it's extremely important. What Muslims need to do first is study what Islam says, what our epistemology is, what our philosophy is, before they study philosophy under the guise of Western skepticism in the guise of philosophy, because that can lead to serious issues. And there's people who, a basic book is go into any good Islamic bookstore, get the explanation of Imam Tahawi's book. That's just basic, but even within that, you'll get the Islamic philosophical paradigm, which shows that we begin with the fitrah. We don't begin with the assumption there's no God and then try to come to it. Rather, we actually see that the signs of Allah reinforces what's within. And Muslim philosophers and Muslim thinkers, our paradigm and our foundational first assumptions are different to the Western philosophers. So it's extremely important that we don't fall into the if a Western young man grew up in the Muslim world and then studied the Islamic philosophical tradition, they'd definitely be inclined to that, even though they're a Western person. In the same way, when you get a Muslim who doesn't know Islamic philosophy, but they grow up and then they study the Western tradition, they'll be, okay, that's the only paradigm, right? But remember, and look, I just want to give you guys something extremely important here to understand. Philosophy today simply means Western skepticism. It doesn't mean philosophy itself. I'm going to give you one solid piece of evidence for this. Knowledge was defined by Aristotle as true justified belief. Justified true belief. Anything that was justified, that was true, that someone believed, that means they had knowledge. Okay, that's the definition. Now, that was well accepted for at least 2,000 years. Edmund Gettier came around in the 1960s, and he showed how this was wrong. You could actually come up with these things called Gettier cases, where somebody believes something, they know something, and it's justified, but it's not, they don't have knowledge, right? But even though this was a big thing in the Western world, 1960s, we discovered that's not true justified belief. The people who actually discovered that true justified belief is not knowledge goes back to the Indus civilization over 1,000 years ago. So those philosophers from the Indus Valley civilization, they came to this realization, but this wasn't transposed into the Western tradition. So again, this blanket thing, should I just go study philosophy? No, don't think it's a good idea. And I think definitely Hijab wants to add something.
I want to add to that you got to think about before you study anything in life. I want to actually bring this back to the Quran, and there was a verse I was just reading the other day, and I was thinking about it, and wallahi, it really illuminated my own perspective on studying anything, right? And it's a verse in Surah At-Tawbah. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, ما كان المؤمنون لينفروا كافة ولولا نفر كل فرقة منهم طائفة ليتفقهوا في الدين ولينذروا قومهم إذا رجعوا إليهم لعلهم يحذرون. Yeah, this is a verse that it says it's not for the believers to go out in fighting all together. Okay, and this next part here is really interesting because it got me confused. The Arabic got me a little bit confused, and I started looking at tafsir and stuff like that. It says, if all of them went out all together, and there was not a group of them that go out and learn the religion, okay, so that they can go back to their people and tell warn them, so they may be warned. The question is, who are the people that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is talking about in this verse? Is it the people that are going to do jihad with the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, or is it saying that there should be a group of people left behind so that they don't get killed in jihad, so that if jihad happens, there's some people that can still learn and teach the religion to their people? The majority of mufassirs, to my surprise, said it was actually the people who are going with the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam that are being referred to as al-yatafaqahu fi din, the ones who are going to learn about the religion, right? And this, like, when I was doing my own tadabbur, brought me something really beautiful. Wallah, it's amazing. I might make like an Instagram post on it or something like that, which is this: the best knowledge is practical knowledge. And you know what? This the thamara of this ayah, or the fruit from this ayah, is that why? Because Allah says the ones who are going out, according to this, which is the majority opinion, the ones who are going out with the Prophet are the ones who are referred to as liyatafaqahu fi din, the ones who are learning about the religion. Okay, وَلْيُنذِرُوا قَوْمَهُمْ إِذَا رَجَعُوا إِلَيْهِمْ لَعَلَّهُمْ يَحْذَرُونَ, and that they may warn their people when they come back to them, so that they may be warned. But of course, so the question is, it's a bit of a surprise. It's counterintuitive, because you think learning happens in a classroom. It happens when someone is explaining to you these things, and all these whiteboard and lectures and whatever. But Allah is telling us that true learning happens in practice.
Transformative.
Yeah, because look, you're going out with the Prophet. You're going to see how he acts in the jihad. He's going to be talking about the rulings. He's going to be giving you that hands-on knowledge. The best knowledge is practical knowledge. After knowledge about Allah and Aqidah and so on, that's the best knowledge. You have to know that. You can't go. It will be a shame for a Muslim. It will be a shame for a Muslim to try and approach a book of philosophy, and they haven't even looked at the Quran, for example.
Bro, that's such a beautiful
one point. And the second thing, sorry, just before I forget, the second thing is, after this essential knowledge, okay, the thing right after that is practical knowledge. So now we got to think about what you want to do. You have to be objective orientated, right? What are your objectives? You want to come out and do da'wah? You want to come out and do da'wah in the West? You want to come and, are you living in another part? Because I know there's Pakistanis watching this or whatever. Are you in the Middle East? Are you an Arab? You want to do da'wah in the Arabian world? Do you want to do da'wah to Muslims? Do you want to do da'wah to non-Muslims? Or do you want to do nasiha, give nasiha to them? Once you've established your objective, now we can start talking about what should we study. Okay,
and definitely, and I just remembered a really beautiful point, two beautiful points actually, which Sheikh Abdurrahim Green mentioned.
Yes,
there was a brother a few years ago who was very much like, he was very impressed by Hamza Sortsi's, he's very impressed by your science. And
you're talking about Ali Dawah. Yes,
young ones, untrained. So this particular brother, he said to Sheikh Green that, what shall I study? Yes. Like, I want to do dawah, I want to do this, I want to do this. And he was all about what books in terms of science or philosophy. I don't remember, but that line. Everyone, I mean, a lot of people are like this now. And Sheikh Green said to him, read the Quran, finish it, and then read it again. And when you finish it, read it again. And you know what? I honestly think that was the best advice, because the Quran has its own philosophy. It has its own paradigm. It has its own epistemology. And once that's indoctrinated within you, and it's exactly what Hijab said about transformative knowledge. Yeah. So there is things in the Quran which do not make sense until you ponder upon them, think about them, apply them, then it becomes part of you. So how would you leave this ocean of knowledge and then go to a little pond where you can't even have a tadpole living?
Thank you.
And it's diseased with mosquitoes.
Let me tell you something, right? This is very important. Like when I did like a politics degree, and I focused on political philosophy, which is not, and I've done theories of the self and consciousness, but that was not my focus. My focus was political philosophy for my undergraduate. But at the same time, I was studying Islam. At the same time, I was memorizing the Quran. At the same time, when I was memorizing the Quran, I understood what I was saying. I was protected by the Quran and I was protected by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. I think we would say in Arabic, aib. It's rude. It's kind of like disrespectful for you to go and immerse yourself in philosophy and you're not even focusing on what, because if philosophy is wise sayings of the
Western
people,
skepticism,
which is that wise sayings of the people, and you don't even want to know what the most wise has said to you. That's disrespectful, man. That's you start with the Quran. You start with once you at least.
It's kind of like me making a video about feminism and deleting Mohammed Hijab's comments. Yeah, honestly, it makes perfect sense. Allah is the authority. Allah is all wise. Allah's messengers. And then what do? We go to, for example, what's the name of that guy who talks about time? The Greek philosopher. Senecus, right? He's talking about time, and people are sharing his stuff about time, and he talks about how life is so short, and you get old and you die. Most people, they spend their life not being fulfilled. You always
is he a Stoic, or is he?
That in that vein, Anyway, when I was thinking about this, because there's videos about this, Muslims getting impressed, other people getting impressed. I thought,
so it's last.
But instead, and this is the thing which is very powerful, what is Seneca saying? What is Tony Robbins today saying? What is Zig Ziglar? These people thousands of years ago and today, alive today, like Tony Robbins, what they're saying, if you want to be successful in life, think about death, because death is going to create urgency. It's going to do this. It's going to do that. Well, guess what?
Bro,
they're half true. Because the messenger of Allah, he said the same thing, except he gave you a direction, and these guys don't give you a direction.
It's like Martin Heidegger. He said the same thing. He said, go and visit the graves, as if it was some revelation. Everyone was talking about the Prophet gave us that 1,400 years ago.
They did half the thing. They said they created the urgency, but they didn't give you the direction. The messenger of Allah creates the urgency and then tells you what? Prepare for the hereafter. So the wisdom of the Prophet ﷺ, if anything, the crumbs that fall off his table, they that flow away into the sea, and some people just pick that up and we're very impressed. Honestly, I'll be very, very honest with you guys. I spend a lot of my time just watching and reading and doing this type of stuff about philosophical ideas, and I did that for many, many years. And then I started to realize, do you know what? All of these things are in the Quran and Sunnah. I literally do not know of any piece of knowledge which is interesting or sophisticated, except Allah's Messenger already mentioned it. For example, I'm about to say something
beautiful. Go on.
Beautiful here, I hope, what does Allah teach us about, Allah's Messenger teach us about zina? Very interesting concept, Allah's Messenger, rather than simply saying to the young man who came to him, he said he wants to commit zina, rather than saying to him, no, that's haram, or if you do that, you're going to get flogged, he said to him, how do you like someone to do that to your mother or your sister or your daughter? Now, there's a book called Change, and it's all about how you change and how to make change and all of this. And it gives this powerful analogy. And this book went viral. People are writing like blogs about it, videos about it. Online, you'll see change and audios and all this stuff. What does the guy say? He basically says, we human beings are made up of three things, right? We have an elephant. On top of the elephant, we have a rider, and then we have the path. The path is our environment. The rider is our intelligence, and the elephant is our emotions. The rider, if he wants to go forward and the the elephant wants to go that way, the rider will win for 5 minutes, and then 5 hours they'll be going in the wrong direction. Environment and intelligence, they play the least roles. The greatest is emotion. What did the Messenger of Allah do? He didn't go to his intellect and say it's wrong. He didn't say get away from the woman alone, although those are valid too. he said, how do you like someone to do that to your mother? How do you like someone to do that to your daughter? He changed his state.
Triggered him.
And Tony Robbins, what did he talk about? State change.
Yeah.
And what does Tony Robbins say? Check this out. He says 3 things. He says, and this guy is everywhere. He's given advice to Bill Clinton. Obviously, Bill Clinton didn't take it in some regards. This is after watershed time, so we can talk about this stuff, younglings. So anyway, young ones, untrained ones. So what was I saying? Yeah. So what does he talk about? Check this out.
Yeah.
He says to change your state, you need 3 things: focus, language, and physiology. You need to focus on something. You need to say something, and you need to change your physiology. That's the salah.
Allah.
You focus, you say, and you change your state. And what did the Messenger of Allah say? When you're angry, sit down. If you're sitting down, lie down. Tell me something that these guys are coming up with today, which the Messenger of Allah did.
Allahu Akbar. And can I just add to this one more thing, just to kind of really answer their question, because this is a very common question. That's why I want to give it justice. Look, when it comes, the first thing I said when we'll try and give advice on this is you have to be goal orientated in life in general, right? If you're not goal orientated and you're not objective orientated, you will be a failure. Just please take that advice from me. I'm not. I don't want this to go over anyone's head. It's if you don't know what your goals are for the next 5 or 10 years, you're going to be a failure in life. You're going to let life take control of you. Life is going to be like a horse that's running with you rather than you're directing it, right?
Like that.
That's what's going to happen. That's number one. So you got to think about what contribution do you want to make. So the first thing, going back to the verse, because we want to make this a Quranic answer. When you're studying, generally, the first objective should be يَتَفَقَّهُ فِي الدِّينِ, so that you know about the religion. وَرَفْعَ الْجَهْلَ عَنْ نَفْسِكَ, that you get the jahl, the ignorance of the religion, away from you. And then number 2 is تَحْذِيرُ الْآخَرِ, so you can go and help and benefit the other people. There's 2 things that you should want. I'm telling you what your objective should be. Number 1, not to be ignorant, because being ignorant is not as good. هل يستوي الذين يعلمون والذين لا يعلمون, are equivalent the ones who don't know from the ones who know.
Yeah.
So it's يرفع الله الذين آمنوا منكم والذين أوتوا العلم درجات, as Allah says in the Quran, that Allah, He raises and ranks those of you who have been given iman and the ones who have been believe and who have been given knowledge in ranks. So the first thing is to get rid of the jahl. And then to benefit the other people. If you have to study philosophy, you have to have a prerequisite in Islamic aqidah. You have to have some understanding, at least a grounding in the Quran, some understanding in fiqh, basics of Islam. You have had to have been doing some talab al-ilm for at least 5 years, in my opinion, for you to understand what Allah is trying to say to you first. Because it's, number 1, a disrespect. If you want to go to the direction of the philosophers who are giving you these wise sayings, and the most wise is giving you information and knowledge and nasiha, and you're going to other people first. That is the hugest. I cannot imagine of a bigger. That is verging on kufr, I believe, verging on kufr and jahl and ignorance. But if you're doing it because you want to, now if your objectives have changed, the reason why you're studying philosophy is not because you want to know about the world and all this, like you're a blank slate, tabula rasa, and you want to be filled up. No, that's not your intention. Your intention is to go there and you want to find, you want to be grounded on the knowledge that you need to protect your family and your community. Okay, you need to learn political philosophy. You need to learn philosophy of science. You need to learn philosophy of biology. You need to learn about this and that. You need to learn about those things. And you don't need to learn about it more than you need to learn about it. If you're going to just relegate it to your own kids and your own community or whatever, like, you don't need to become an alim in it. You don't need to have a PhD in it. But at the same time now, we do need some people in the Ummah who do have PhD work on these fields so that they can represent us as Muslims intellectually. And so it depends on what your objectives are. If you want to represent Muslims, okay, you want to represent the Muslim community intellectually, you have to train yourself first and foremost in the religion of Islam, because it will be a big disrespect to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and the messenger for you to start with philosophy and relegate that. And then you can choose a subfield and stick to your objectives, and in 5 or 10 years you'll have something that you will change your life and change other people's lives.
And absolutely. And one thing I just wanted to add about this is, if you as a believer, if you as a Muslim, you're more attracted to these subjects than you are to the Quran and the Sunnah, I mean, you giving dawah is the least of the worries.
Yeah, exactly. Wallahi.
There is a serious
wallahi,
issue.
It actually makes me a little bit angry.
Look, I'll tell you something about Mohammed Hijab. I was remembering the other day. Yeah. So when Mohammed Hijab wasn't Mohammed Hijab, he was Sirat Education. That's what I knew. In fact, my phone still had him saved as Sirat Education. Yeah.
Okay.
He came and he said, he wanted to speak to him about something about Darwinism, right? So I said, okay, fine. Sat in the office. This is 2015 or 16.
Well.
Yeah, Imran. So anyway, I went over David Stove, and what shocked me was actually he knew a lot. But what surprised me is he didn't talk about evolution. But then when he did talk about it, he learned more, and then he spoke about it. So he didn't just, okay, let me just learn a little bit and let me just chuck it out there. Like what's surprising even today is that he's been reading Belinsky, he's been reading this and that. But again, it's about, and look, alhamdulillah, I mean, I'm older than Hijab, but the first time
not the look of it,
I gave a talk on feminism, I did not put it out until Hijab checked the slides. Remember I was in Pakistan, I seen the slides?
Yeah.
And I got his book, even though I'd been reading up about feminism for a while. So the thing is, it's not just, you want to be you want to focus on a topic, you want to be, better than others or whatever. No. It's okay, there's a need. I would never talk about feminism. The only reason I started talking about feminism is because feminism was correlating with Darwinism and there was a conflict. Yeah. There was a dovetailing of objectives of showing how both of these things are actually wrong. And so exactly like Hijab said, if there's people already out there doing that great stuff, you don't need to go out there and, okay, I want to study this. Every Muslim, I truly believe, every Muslim, if they really thought about priorities and what's going to benefit them, they'd be talking to us about, okay, like which Quran course did you do? How did you do this? How did you do that? And I think through your debates, through Hamza's debates, through the works that's been happening, a negative byproduct can be that people think you have to start with philosophical ideas. Yeah. People think you have to start with this. Right. You have to start with explaining why you can have intercourse with a dog, right? Like that's the starting point of our epistemology.
Yeah, well, you're right, and that's bro. Like at the end of the day, I really feel like there's people in the Dawah that know the Bible more than the Quran, bro, and that just makes me sick. That's all I can say about that. That actually makes me sick. There's no justification for that. There's some people that memorize more verses from the Bible than they have from the Quran. And that it shows a lack of sincerity. That's all I say. I see that as a lack of sincerity, because if you really wanted to change communities, how can you? The Quran says, فَلَا تُطِعَ الْكَافِرِينَ وَجَاهِدُهُمْ بِهِ جِهَادًا كَبِيرًا.
With the Quran.
With the Quran. The jihad is with the Quran. How are you going to do jihad? It's like you have a bow and arrow. Every surah of the Quran is like an arrow, and you have the bow. But you want to go out there putting some redundant material in the bow to try and shoot it at the strongest thing you have is the Quran. And if you want to be a representative for Muslims, if you cannot defend the book of Allah, and you don't even know what people are talking about when they're talking about certain verses, then that is ridiculous.
So I've just made a mistake, and the mistake I've made is not interacting enough with the audience. So I'm going to go to Fudley Games, the player. Please ask your question, and sorry for keeping you waiting. And I'm going to post the link for anybody else that wants to join.
One thing is that the reason why you did that is because this question is one of the most common questions.
Absolutely.
So it was worth it.
It's definitely worth it.
Hello.
Assalamu alaikum.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes, we can, brother. How are you doing?
I'm doing good. How are you guys doing?
Alhamdulillah. Are you from the States?
Yeah, from Michigan.
MashaAllah, I can tell by the accent. What's your question, Yaki?
I have just two questions, but the first one's about I seen you guys' video on because a lot of on the apes, people say that some people say that we started from apes, but a question I have is if they say that we came from apes, why there's still monkeys that they haven't evolved, they're still monkeys. So
the thing is, just to correct something here, the Darwinists then don't say that we came from apes. They say that we have a common ancestor with apes. Now, I'm just gonna, and your question is very, very good, but I'm gonna answer in a bit of a bit of a way which looks like a distraction, but it's not. And it's actually a thought experiment. Yeah. So me and Hijab here, what we're gonna do is we're gonna go in a time machine and we're gonna go back 2,000 years to Bethlehem. We're gonna go back to Bethlehem, and we're gonna take from the Royal Society in London the best biologists that they can access, the best scientists. We're going to take a team of 50. And with the 50 plus us 252, we end up in Bethlehem 2,000 years back using a time machine. We get off. Now we know it's Bethlehem, and we know that Isa alayhi salam is here, and we know that Maryam alayhi salam is here, but the scientists don't know anything. They just come with us. And then what we do is we tell them, we're the directors, we tell them, can you do a DNA analysis of everybody and tell us who's related to who? So they're going to take out the DNA of all of the people in Bethlehem. They're also going to take out the DNA of who? Isa alayhi salam. Who are they going to take out the DNA of? Maryam alayhi salam. Then they're going to make a chart and they're going to give us a presentation. They're going to say, okay guys, you commissioned us to take out the DNA of everybody, right, in Bethlehem, and to make a genealogical tree. This is the tree that we've built. And me and Hijab will sit there and we will say, okay, this man, Jesus of Nazareth, Isa alayhi salam, who's his mother? They're going to say this woman, Mary. And then we're going to say, okay, who's the father? They're going to say this person, person X, who's most likely to be somebody closely related to Maryam alayhi salam. We're going to say, that's not the father. They're going to say, why not? We're going to say, because he was born of a virgin, because it's a miracle. They're going to say, no, the DNA sequences, we can see the closely related is the mother is this, closely related to the father is this. We'll say, no, it's a miracle. They'll say, no, it's not. No matter what scientific arguments we give, it'll never work.
That's right.
What's happened is methodological naturalism has led to the conclusion miracles are not possible. Reproduction without a male and a female is not possible. Therefore, the mother is Mary and the father is this person, even though that's a false positive. So, likewise, in methodological naturalism, when applied to biology,
That's right.
when applied to human history,
That's right.
they have to link us to something else genetically close to us, whichever primate. Now, when we come along and we say, like Allah says in the Quran, Adam is like Isa, the similitude, we say there's an exception, we say there's supernatural. They cannot, and mark my words, a priori, meaning before observation. The scientists, before they observed the genomes, they had a belief, which is virgin birth is impossible. Male, female come together to have reproduction. So likewise, Adam alayhi salam is a creation of Allah, a miracle like Isa alayhi salam, but those scientists will never accept it because of methodological naturalism. Hence why there is no point, and I think brother Fadli the Games, I'm just emphasizing, there is no point challenging common ancestry between humans and chimpanzees, or universal common ancestry, or any of these things using science alone. You have to go to the philosophy of science. You have to look at epistemic weighing. Why do we believe in the miracle of Isa alayhi salam? Because Allah said so. Why do we believe in the miracle of Adam alayhi salam? Because Allah said so. The same reason that the atheists deny Isa alayhi salam's virgin birth is the same reason why they deny Adam alayhi salam's creation.
Allah, I like it.
Yeah, it makes sense.
I want to add something to this.
By the way, this is from Sheikh Abdul Rahim Green. It's not for myself.
Of course. It wouldn't be from yourself. It was so great like that. You know what? There's a beautiful thing, right? And this, what you're saying, is in the Quran. Okay, so there's two verses I want to bring, which is that, you know, the story of Zakaria, and this is in Surah Maryam, where Zakaria gave the glad tidings of the son Yahya. And he said, I've never named anyone this. And some say, oh, we know some Johns that were before John the Baptist. But Allah says, you know, we haven't named, he hasn't named him that. It could have been some other person who named it. That's a different shubha for a different day. Anyway, the next thing is, Zakaria قال ربي أن يكون لي غلام وكانت امرأتي عاقرا وقد بلغت من الكبر عتية. That, oh my sustainer, how could I have a son when my wife has been barren and I've become utterly infirm through old age? قال كذلك قال ربك هو علي هين. It's easy for me, yeah. And this is the shahid here. وقد خلقتك من قبل ولم تك شيئا. We have created you before that, and you were nothing. So here the point is that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, because even Zakaria asked this question, because he was so used to methodological naturalism in his own time, you know. This is the idea, like, it's not a singular situation. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions this many times in the Quran.
That's very interesting.
Yeah, well,
very interesting.
Zakaria, okay, this situation here, the woman is not given birth, she's barren. She's barren. How could fertilization takes place? How, you know, all these things that we just talked about, the erosion is not taking place. How can you explain? It's inexplicable that you have this woman that's going to be, she's an old woman, like in age, and now she's going to be given birth and so on. And so Allah is saying the reason why, because, and this is his illah, his reasoning in the Quran. The reason why, it's easy for me, number one, or his justification. Number two, وَقَدْ خَلَقَتُكَ مِنْ قَبْلِ. And we have created you before, and you are nothing. And what's really important about this is that it's physically true. There was a time where, like 29 years ago, I wasn't here. Like 30 years ago, I wasn't here. Like I was 29. I'm 29 years old. 30 years ago, I wasn't in existence. There was nothing of me. There was nothing of me. Like I just did not exist. So Allah is saying you are nothing, and then you became something. So why is it difficult to conceive of a first human being? Why does that have to? Because the naturalist is always stuck in second gear. He's thinking there must have been something before. There must have been. But God is saying no. If you take the premise that there's this all-powerful sustainer God, He can create you from nothing. So this becomes it's a non sequitur. Do you know what I mean?
You need to write a paper on that.
Well, it's because Allah says in the Quran also, "Ma ashhadtuhum khalqa as-samawati wal-ard wa la khalqa anfusahum."
It's greater than you.
Yeah, no, we don't know this one. We have not let them see the creation of the heaven and the earth, and we have not let them see the creation of themselves. No one saw abiogenesis. It's unobservable phenomena. Well, the skeptic fool. No, I'm not talking about the Brahmin. I'm talking about the obviously the skeptics saying, "Oh, this, and how could you not believe it, brother? You have not seen this phenomenon. You have not seen it.
In fact, if anything, you've seen the opposite to it." So, brother Fadli Games, the player, may Allah bless you. Jazakallah khair for joining us. I'm going to go to Omar the Egyptian, or should I say Egyptian?
Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum salam. Just before you, speak, I get mistaken for Egyptian people for some reason. Like I've had people come up to me and said, "Are you Egyptian?"
You should take that as the greatest compliment.
Yeah, so first of all, I really respect what you said about first learning the Islamic ideas before going to philosophical argument. I really respect that, and I was impressed by that. So I have two questions I want to ask about. First of all, how sorry, I forgot my question. Let's say you've got someone believing that it's God is unjust because of let's say someone in the 18th century living somewhere like so far away from any Muslim country, they never heard of Islam, died early. They would say, how is Allah just in that example? So how do you argue with that?
I'll give a short answer, and I'll leave Hijab to give a long answer because I need to pray Isha, and I'm pretty sure he's prayed, but I haven't prayed yet. So I'll give you a very short answer. The short answer is, you see, when it comes to a question like what, okay, here's a simple analogy. So I'm gonna, on the way back home tonight, I'm going to be getting a lift from Mohammed Hijab to my house. Yeah. Now I can actually fall asleep in the car. I can be like, okay, he's gonna drop me off. Yeah. I'm not gonna think to myself, he's gonna drive up to Yorkshire and then take out a double-barrel shotgun and then just deal with me in a field. Right? I don't have that lack of trust. Like, oh my God, like, is he really trustworthy? What if I fall asleep and he's just
you're coming with some nice
yeah.
bro.
Anyway,
I like it.
So and then later on, I said, he drops me off, and then I say, Hijab, alhamdulillah, you dropped me off. But I had these doubts that you're going to take me Yorkshire, and then Hijab's going to be like, bro, like,
yeah,
don't you trust me? Like,
yeah,
come on, man. Like, I'm not crazy. So, when we question, or when the atheist questions and says, what would God do with the orphan child that was born in, a natural reserve and they were away from Islam? What about people who never heard of Islam? They're doing the same thing. They're basically saying, I have more compassion than Allah. Allah, I'm doubtful what Allah's going to do, so I'm going to question Allah. And what does Allah say about the disbelievers? The disbelievers despair of Allah's mercy. The fact is this: Allah created us as beings, and we could have been beings that were vicious. Do you know that some sharks, they kill before they're born, because in the womb they kill their siblings. So before they enter the earth, yes, before they enter life, before they're born, they've killed already. If Allah wanted, human beings could have been that vicious. But Allah sent down mercy and a small part of it, and He kept the rest with Himself. So this whole question, what would Allah do? And look, this is not a good. This is not a new question. Musa alayhi salam with Fir'aun. What is Musa saying? Musa saying, the Lord of the East and the West, the Lord of you and your forefathers. And every single time, what is Pharaoh saying? Didn't you kill a man? Didn't you do this? Are you trying to spread corruption? Curveballs. And then when Musa alayhi salam saying something like, calling you to your Lord, what Lord of the worlds? And look at this. And when Musa alayhi salam is giving him evidence and giving him proof and giving him arguments, what does he say? What about people before me? What about people before me? Meaning, fine, you've given me evidence. What about people before me? Look at Musa alayhi salam's answer. And this is the true answer of a mu'min. What does he say? My Lord knows best about them. Meaning, don't worry about them, Fir'aun. You don't have more compassion than Allah does. You don't have more knowledge than Allah does. Allah has given you evidence. Don't you worry about the other people. Allah created them, and Allah, it does not do injustice to anyone. And there's a narration of the Prophet ﷺ. There's a narration of the Prophet ﷺ, which I'm going to repeat, but I still need to find the actual the grading of it. But it's something which I've heard a reputable scholar say, and that scholar has actually verified that this is correct, but I need to find it, which I'm going to paraphrase now, but the meaning is totally correct. When people ask what will happen to the children of the disbelievers, there'll be no khair in this ummah. Why? Because ultimately what's happened is they're not trusting Allah anymore. You should be able to just say, if you truly, I'm not talking about you, I'm just people who ask the question, or atheists. If you truly believe in Allah, you don't ever need to ask what is going to happen with these people, what's going to happen with those people, because ultimately Allah is Ar-Rahman, and any concern you have in your heart can never be greater than Allah's concern for His own creation.
Subhanallah. Can I go to my second question?
I want to add one more thing.
Yeah,
obviously,
the
Quran says, وَمَا كُنَّا مُعَذِّبِينَ حَتَّى نَبْعَثَ رَسُولًا. We were not going to punish anybody except that we send them a warner. This is in Surah Al-Isra, chapter 17, and the verse number 15. So this is the answer. Like, in terms of who, there's people that have not heard the message and stuff, they will be given a specific message on the Day of Judgment. Even if they heard a distorted type of message, they will be given, because it's not the message then. If it's a distortion, then they will be given a specific test on the Day of Judgment. So we can't say for sure that these people are going to be eternally abiding in hell, especially if they haven't been given exposure to the message. Does that answer the question?
Yeah, thank you. Going to my second question, how do you make it so? When I look from my perspective, for example, I look at a paganistic belief or a paganistic tradition, I feel it's very foreign for me. I look and say, wow, they're so superstitious. How would someone believe in that? So if I look into a point of view of an atheist, I think they would do this the same thing to Islam or any other Abrahamic religion. So would you make Islam so it's not so foreign to an atheist?
I think the main thing is the thing is, subhanallah, Allah says in the Quran, سَنُرِيهِمْ آيَاتِنَا فِي الْآفَاقِ وَفِي أَنفُسِهِمْ حَتَّى يَتَبَيَّنَ لَهُمْ أَنَّهُ الْحَقُّ. That we will surely show them our signs in the horizons and in themselves until they are sure that it's the truth. Now, if you really ponder over this verse, and bear in mind that human beings live for, on average, 60, 70, 80 years. That's a long time in the grand scheme of things. Like, yani, it's not like you have 3 or 4 days to make a decision, and you don't know what you're scurrying along trying to find, and you're not finding it. Allah's going to burn you. It's too late. It doesn't work like this. Like, it's a very natural thing to ask, why am I here? What am I doing here? What's my purpose? And it just boggles the mind that there can be people that live entire lifetimes going to work, eating food, watching Netflix or whatever it is, watching YouTube, watching all these Instagram stuff, doing sports, procreating, having intercourse, having multiple sexual partners, going clubbing, going to this place. But all of this one question, which is the most elementary and basic question, like, do I have a purpose? Is there a reason for me being here? How did I get here? Where am I going? All of these straightforward questions that people don't take the time to answer that. Like, even if you go on YouTube now and see the fad diets that there are, ketogenic diet, paleogenic diet, this diet, the Dolce diet, I don't know, all these kinds of diets, people are concerned about their health because they see the immediate result for that. People are concerned about their knowledge. They want to get a degree. They're concerned about their careers. They want to make money. Why would they not be concerned about the most important thing of all, which is purpose? And so it just boggles the mind that creatures that are so directed towards purpose would deliberately malign their own natural, intuitive movement towards it by all of these distractions in life. All you need to do really to get yourself back orientated, and this is probably one of the best things for mental health that's not spoken about by these psychologists, Western psychologists, is go to a graveyard or look at someone being buried, because it will just let you know and see this is going to be your demise, man. And so before I get to that stage, I need to figure out what I'm doing here, or where I'm going, or what's going to happen after I'm in this position. And for me, I just feel like if someone is sincere, honestly, if someone is sincere to that purpose, they will be doing the exploration. They're going to check the Christian religion, the Jewish religion, the Muslim religion, the major world religion. It's going to be accessible enough for them to be able to check it. They're going to check it and make a kind of conclusive value judgment on it. And Islam is made in such a way, or the corpus of Islam is in such a way, is giving you falsification tests. You know, لَوَجَدُوا فِي اخْتِلَافًا كَثِيرًا فَأْتُوا بِسُورَةٍ مِّن مِّثْلِهِ, inimitability tests, this test, that test, is trying to get you to a point of certainty on your purpose. So if you're sincere, I genuinely believe if you're sincere, you'll arrive at this point. Well, there's one God, one creator, God that created everything that's in existence and me, and he created a purpose for me, and so on and so forth. And there is something that happens after death. If you get to that point, then that's it. Islam will give you the satisfaction that you need on an intellectual level, on a rational level, on a spiritual level, and all these things. But if someone is worried because something is alien to their culture and stuff, they're not true seekers of truth. They're not sincere seekers of truth. That's the reality of the situation. If someone is looking for truth, they don't care where it comes from. That's the truth. That's a general principle. If someone is actively looking for the truth and they're willing to follow it, even if it goes against country, tribe, or whatever community, they will find the truth. They will find it. Seeketh the truth, and the truth, as the Bible says, shall set you free. But if you're not going to seek the truth, then how are you going to be set free from it? So people have to think in these ways, man.
Yeah. MashaAllah.
You got
thank you very much. Yeah, thank you very much.
Thank you so much, bro. I don't know how to manage the.
Yeah, just call out the names.
Oh, okay. So who did we just have?
We had Omar the Egyptian, so just the other name is Korsol.
Yeah.
Assalamu alaikum, brothers.
Walaikum salam.
Assalamu alaikum wa barakatuh.
How are you guys doing?
Alhamdulillah. How are you doing, brother?
Alhamdulillah, akhi. Alhamdulillah. So,
where are you calling in from?
I'm from down under you. Close by. Sorry?
Down under. Where from?
Underneath you, don't worry. We're not planning a coup or something. From the Netherlands, bro.
Netherlands.
Yeah,
Yes. Sorry to hear that.
Why? Why so?
Yes. Which city?
Rotterdam.
Rotterdam. So, what's it called? Wardam Islam.
Yeah, Warm Islam. I'm a member from them, actually.
You're one of the members.
Yeah, man.
MashaAllah. Do you still have that brother? What's his name? He's a
Sultan.
Turkish
Fatih.
sheikh who's like the head of it, right?
Abdullah.
I don't remember his name, but yeah, we went down there a few years ago. You guys are doing great work, mashallah. Very good.
MashaAllah. Barakallah fik. You mean Abdullah Öztürk?
He's a Turkish brother. He's
Abu
maybe-
Arva, they also come. He's the head.
Yeah, he's
He's an
like
older man.
50s, right? Something like that.
Yeah. It's you talk about Abu Arva. Yeah.
Abu
Arva.
Arva. Okay,
Yeah.
yeah. Give him my salam. He's a wonderful
Inshallah. Inshallah. When I see him, during the lockdowns, we don't see each other much.
Oh, yes.
I'll tell him, inshallah.
He took us around Rotterdam and really took care of us, mashallah.
Oh, alhamdulillah, mashallah. So, don't mind to be rude, but I have actually two questions, two questions that come along quite often.
Mhm.
And I don't see much content on, and I scour the Muslim internet and the Muslim responses, but I don't see anybody responding to these questions. And I actually, as a street da'i with Quranic Islam, actually encountering these questions a lot. I also sometimes wander off to the atheist side of the internet to see what's brewing under them. So what I've noticed is what's not tackled is the notion that we're living in a simulation. This is one of the things that's proposed and propelled by the likes of Joe Rogan, Elon Musk, and George Hotz. Big names, big programmers. These guys get worshipped by almost all the atheists, and they really propel this thought, and it's not really tackled. So if it can be responded to in such a short time, I would like your response. If not, leave it off. Maybe make a video on it with proper research.
A hard problem of solipsism is something that atheists' worst nightmare for them. Right? Why would they? Usually, most atheists are naturalists. If you're now introducing solipsism, which is the idea that your brain in a vat,
You're not really.
how is that helping your naturalistic case? That's in fact, if anything, endangering it, because then you are going into, like in substance theory, kind of like an idealism, if anything, rather than a dualism or a materialism. It's actually against materialism in many ways. Like, hard problem of solipsism. So how do you know that that this physical world is not all that there is? That's a stepping stone towards the supernatural. That's one step away from religion, or even if you could argue that is religion, because we believe that it doesn't act as an obstacle at all from the Islamic perspective. If anything, it reinforces that, because the Islamic perspective says that this world is not everything that there is. This reality, this physical reality, is not everything that is. When you die, you're going to be in a reality that is as real as this reality, but it's not this reality. This is called al-hayat al-barzakhiyya, the hayat of the barzakh. Ibn al-Qayyim, he mentions in his book, and he talks about, for example, the hayatul qabr, the life of the grave, and he talks about tawsi' al-qabr, or the idea of enlarging and constricting of the grave, which is a hadith which is very well known. And he says this is not to be understood in this world, in this dunya world. And this Ibn al-Qayyim is obviously a disciple of Ibn Taymiyyah, and he's a hard, if you want to call it that, a literalist, in the sense that he doesn't metaphorize the text and whatever. And this is him saying that when we're talking about constricting the grave and expanding it, this is actually not in the physical grave that we have. This is a dunya this is a reality that is a completely different reality, and you are being subjected to a completely different set of laws. So, for example, when the two angels come and ask you the three questions, and then literally, as the hadith says, you're given a window of either heaven or hell. You'll see your deeds in front of you. It's not happening inside the grave in a physical sense. This is happening in a completely different realm. And this realm is the Hayatul Barzakh, which the soul actually goes to when you're asleep. When you're asleep, your soul goes to the Barzakh. And this is the unconscious. So when you're unconscious in this world, you're conscious in the other world. This is a profound paradigm shift and a reality change. So solipsism and all of those kinds of things, which these atheists if they want to talk about that, first of all, they have to realize they're shooting themselves in the foot if they're physicalists or materialists, number one. Number two, this, if anything, if you want to go down that route, and it's true, you can't actually solve the hard problem of you cannot refute it. The hard problem of solipsism is irrefutable. It's just like the hard problem of consciousness. It's an irrefutable proposition. But we don't need to refute it as Muslims. We, in fact, believe in it.
But Brother Hijab, is it not a difference? Like if they presuppose this all simulation, like how I thought about it, like from first principle perspective, this is not a natural thought, so it doesn't go under that.
Sorry, bro. If it's if this world is a simulation, like this thing, the Matrix, yeah. Do you know the Matrix? Have you watched that? I watched it when I was like a year old or something like that. Yeah, I don't watch films no more. It's a waste of time. But this Matrix thing, where you put the thing in the back and then you say what pill you're going to take and whatever, yeah. Now let me tell you something. If we assume that this is a reality, that the Matrix is a reality, yeah. Do you know that plug they put into the person's head, for example, yeah? And then the person's in a different reality now, which is literally, it's got dimensions, it's got physical properties, or it's got properties of some sort. It's got dimensions, it's got a coherence. It's a coherent place, right? It's not a place of randomness. It's a coherent place. Now, then the same exact arguments that we're proposing to the atheists in this world can be applicable in that world. So how can you have a coherent world where there's uniformity of nature and there is regularity? And who is in control of such simulation? Who has put it into place? Who is maintaining that simulation? Who is sustaining that, or what is sustaining that simulation? If an atheist does himself the disservice of actually positing solipsism as some kind of obstacle, then that is him almost putting himself in a grave, ready for you to put the shovel to the mud and bury him fully. The solipsism in no way, shape, or form acts as an obstacle to the religious narratives. It acts only as an obstacle to the materialist, physicalist narratives of the atheists.
Yeah, and a point to add to this is something Faraz Zahabi said on the live stream, and I had him a few days ago. Is if they make the argument we're in a simulation, it's a very subjective thing when you say you're in a simulation.
That's right.
But in order for a subjective thing to exist, there has to be an objective, right?
Powerful.
The concept of in doesn't make sense unless there's an out, right?
Nice.
So even if there is that Stoicism says essentially that the only thing that can be known is the self, right? And we could be a brain in a vat or whatever.
Yeah.
Fine, you're a brain in a vat, but you still exist.
Exactly.
So something's subjective and something's objective.
Mm-hmm.
But if Faraz gives the example of dreams, right? So you're in a dream, you think it's real, then you wake up and you're like, oh, that was a dream. But how do you know which one's the dream, which one's real?
Dream, yeah.
But it doesn't make a difference.
Yeah.
Because one's objective, one's subjective, and it's kind of like this, yeah. It's an intellectual ego massage. The way that they use it, we're just in a simulation, and Elon Musk says it, and Elon Musk says, we're going to be in the moon in 5 years, and it's just one of those things you say, but when you actually think about it, it makes no real difference, even if it was true.
That's right.
I agree with you. It's not a natural thought.
Yeah.
This is what I was wondering. Is this even applicable under a first principle rule?
What do you mean?
Like, if they take this as an axioma or a first principle, this is justified.
Okay, but here's the thing, yeah. They are making an assertion. They're not even trying to justify a position. I think that's very important, because this happens often. Somebody comes up to me or Hijab or Hamza or Imran and says, an atheist says this, how do you respond?
Oh, right.
Yeah,
so
before you respond.
I think I get his question now.
Okay.
So the answer to this is very powerful. I just thought about it now, right? I think this is in summation, right?
Yeah.
Not everything that is irrefutable. Sorry, not everything that is refutable. Yeah. Not everything that is irrefutable is true.
True. Yeah.
Not everything that is irrefutable is true. Sometimes you can have irrefutable things.
Like a spaghetti monster.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now the spaghetti monster is not a good example, to be honest.
All right.
I know
what you mean.
No, I can refute the spaghetti monster. But not everything that is irrefutable is true. You can have some things which are irrefutable, but which have no evidence. That's a possibility. It's conceivable to have something which is irrefutable, but which, like an axiom. An axiom is exactly that. Something which is which there's no evidence for it, but it's irrefutable.
Yeah. Well,
all right. Thank you.
This is the thing which I think is very important. What's it called when it comes to atheist dialogues? That rather than getting involved in the actual thought experiment, it's sometimes best to simply accept the thought experiment and then say, okay, what's the implications of this? And the implications are nothing.
For us, it's nothing. Yeah.
I mean, if anything,
it's positive.
If anything, what they're basically doing is they're accepting a type of epistemological nihilism. Like they don't really know, or like they can't really know. Like it's a barrier in terms of knowing. They can't know beyond the self. So if anything, like Hijab said, they're just starting off. And the thing which I find funny is that, in Islam, we begin off with our starting paradigm is La ilaha illallah. Our starting paradigm is the Quran and the Sunnah. From that, we build ethics. We expand upon the Islamic ethics. We expand upon those things. And we use that to apply to new realities such as space travel and how do you pray in space and everything. And our system is quite coherent. Now, what they do is they build up humanism, liberalism, feminism. Oh, we're back. Sorry, we had a connection issue.
No problem.
Long story short, you can't build a worldview from that point. So what we're going to do, Brother Korsol, did you have another question? Was that it?
Yeah. Another one I've often encountered on the street is the following one. Sometimes you get delved in their discussions about, you guys know about string theory, right?
You'll know.
Universe that's coming into existence, popping in and out like bubbles and stuff. So somehow they presuppose that the bigger bubble, being the bigger bubble that contains little bubbles, always was there and always is there. And I know there's no data on this, and it's it's somewhat of a pseudoscience. But do you guys have any other arguments to counter this instead of that?
So again, it goes back to that point that I said earlier, that if we are to accept string theory properly, and there's 11 dimensions, and and we accept all of all of their epistemology essentially, yeah. All right, so what? Like what are they trying to say?
They're trying to say that the universe didn't need to have like always is and always was. This is what they're trying to say. Like the bigger universe, not this universe, but the bigger bubble.
Yeah.
This is what they're trying to say.
So now all I'll simply do is, because they're basically saying you have this endless creation, and we just happen to be in one, and then you can add the anthropic principle and say we just happen to be the one in that's designed. Fair enough. They've given it. They've given their perspective. I'm going to turn around and I'm going to say there's 37 universes, and ours is the second most important. It's empirically equivalent, or I can do an n number of alternatives. Like, what's the point? Like, they're not actually making a point. I think this is extremely important to understand. Firstly, they're giving you something which doesn't have any evidence, and they're giving you a thought experiment. What if? So fine. Say, okay, that's fine. Okay, I'm giving you an alternative. What if this?
It's some kind of it's like pseudoscience. They don't have any data on it. I know.
No, they don't. But even the thought experiment, as a thought experiment, you can give something. You can give another. You can give something as arbitrary as that, and then say to them, "Fine, you gave me this. I give you this."
Yeah.
And what? It doesn't. It's neither here nor there.
That's right.
Well, that's a clever one. Yeah. That's a clever one.
It's neither here nor there. And there's an infinite amount. The thing is, what I find funny about these people is that
they're just trying to escape the inescapable.
When it comes to maybe there's a multiverse, maybe string theory is true and there's 11 dimensions, maybe panspermia, that life came to Earth via aliens which seeded life on Earth, maybe consciousness is an illusion. With everything, there's a possibility, and the level of skepticism is going down to 0.0001%. When it comes to the idea of there being a creator, skepticism goes to 1,000%, and then it's like, no, that's irrational. How is that possible? Oh, panspermia, yes. String theory, yes. Yeah. So again, fundamentally, and I always try and do this, and especially when talking to atheists, get to the root of the issue, which is, why are you being selectively skeptical? If you're going to be open to wild ideas, then why not be open to the very rational idea of there being a benevolent creator who has created you with a purpose?
But in addition,
and it's a beautiful answer. Beautiful.
Out of time, I'm going to move on to the other two. Jazakallah khair, brother.
Jazakallah khair.
Make sure you give my salam also to another brother called Alexander.
Alexander?
Yeah.
Alexander. I'm not sure if he's there anymore.
I don't think.
No?
But I will tell Abu Erva, maybe he knows Alexander. Okay. I'll pass it on, inshallah.
Like a quick 1 minute. Just to add to one more thing. One more thing is that for us, like when I've been working on the contingency argument, right? So one of the things that come into it, which I think is very powerful and underused in Western philosophy, even in like medieval, those philosophers who specialize in medieval Islam have not brought this to light, especially in like atheist-theist discussions, which is an argument classically known as the Tarkib argument, which is basically the argument for composition. And this is a specifically Ibn Sina's argument. This is part of his Burhan Siddiqeen. There's parts of it which are problematic or whatever, but in a nutshell, basically, this is the argument that anything which is composed of parts is dependent. That's the extent of the argument. So if someone believes in a multiverse, they're already saying there's more than one of it. So if they're saying there's more than one of it, then it's going to be dependent. Now, if it's dependent, then you still have the infinite regress problem of dependent things. And that's why what Ibn Sina did, which was different to a lot of the other people, is he took the infinite regress and he said, let's go with it. Let's pretend that there is an infinite regress. And he said that even if there is an infinite regress, what's it depending on? Because the thing is, if there's an infinite regress and it can be rearranged or you can add and subtract from it, he argued argumentum ad absurdum that basically this infinite regress is not actually as you think it is. It's dependent because it goes back to the composition argument. So it will always be a very strong stabbing thorn in the side of the atheist that whatever theory or oscillating universe or multiverse theory, whatever they want to bring, eternal universes, because don't forget these individuals believed in an eternal universe, by the way, they were eternalists, that whatever you bring, it's not going to disturb. And it's actually going to bring more problems, because for you, you're going to have to explain why you can have, or how is it explicable to have something which is composed of parts and therefore subject to dissembly.
So you got a bigger problem.
You got a bigger problem.
Yeah. That's very interesting. Okay, let's move on to the question from Abdurrahman. And sorry, we can't add more people to the studio. We've run out of time this week.
Abdurrahman.
Wa alaikum salam, brother.
I have 3 questions. However, I can ask 2 later if you don't have time.
Yes, so please ask one.
My first question is, so for example, in Pakistan, when they argue for a secular society, they say that we all know that science is very important for a country and its progress and its economy. And they say that, and they kind of mock Islam when they say that, okay, if you have Islamic government, the scholars earlier, they were quite hesitant of photos. However, now, since the world didn't care about them, they just, now they came to realization, okay, photos and videos are fine. And adding to this, it's like now in hindsight, we can say that theories can be false, but they can have workable models. So if there's some theory proposed by a scientist, however, it goes against certain Islamic principles or certain ayats, and then he implements that into a workable model. However, if in an Islamic government, it would be stopped, and that man, a scientist, would be deemed a heretic. So how would we solve this issue, please?
Okay, so I always find it very rich when secularists try and use science and say that Islam can stop science. And I would simply ask them, well, why didn't secularists come up with science? Why didn't atheists come up with science? Why didn't skeptics come up with science? Why was it Muslims who were pushing the science and the inductive modern scientific method? People like Hassan ibn Haytham. Then later on, the baton was taken by the likes of Christian scientists. And then later on, when this party has been going on well into 95% of its sort of history, you then get in the late Victorian era and then onwards, more secular scientists becoming prevalent. The thing which is the most important to keep in mind is what applies to one religion applies to another religion, including the religion of liberalism. There's things that come out in science which challenge liberalism, such as the idea that gender equality is not just a social construct, patriarchy is not just a social construct, we're hardwired for it. And then what you get is you get liberal feminists who try and challenge it and challenge science and cause a wreckage in the scientific community by challenging valid science, by saying, no, we can't accept that natural selection engineered us to be patriarchal. No, we cannot accept that natural selection made men more physically stronger, made men more aggressive. No, we cannot accept the idea that gender roles is something which was a stable selection strategy. So you can say, yeah, Islam, there may be things in Islam which certain scientific theories disagree with, and therefore Muslims are less likely to favor them. Well, that's the same with humanism, same with liberalism, same with any of these secular philosophies. Additionally, because we as Muslims, we believe science from an instrumental perspective, that we can hold on to scientific theories even though they contradict us from an epistemic point of view, such as the steady state model, but it doesn't mean that we have to throw out the baby with the bathwater. It doesn't mean that we have to completely disregard all of science and just say, okay, we're not going to accept this because this is not in line with the Quran. In fact, and this is very important, secular societies such as the USSR, they persecuted scientists. Christian Europe persecuted scientists. Yet in the Islamic world, people who were deemed heretics, were called out to be heretics, but none were burnt at the stake. Yeah, Muslims put up with people who were in the opposition, just like the Prophet ﷺ put up with the leader of the hypocrites. Muslims put up with complete heretics from a theological point of view, and even people who had ideas in terms of science which went against Muslims, but Muslims never killed those people. And the other thing is that making the yardstick scientific progress. So we're going to choose a society, whether it's secular or Islamic, based upon how well it does scientifically. If you just look at the history of science, then we know that according to that argument, then you should be choosing a theistic society because it gives you a moral imperative that atheistic societies can't give you. Additionally to that, who said science flourishing is a yardstick for truth? That the society in which science flourishes, that's the true society, and the societies in which science doesn't flourish is not the true society. So we can challenge them from a philosophical perspective, and we can also challenge them from a history perspective. The reason why I'm laughing is Mohammed Hijab is a caveman, has no idea how to use StreamYard. There's a guy trolling and he managed to learn how to block it. And that's a miracle. That's a miracle right there. So Jazakallah khair, brother Abdurrahman, for your question. We're going to move on to Earth because we've run out of time. So over to you, Earth. What's your question?
Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum salam.
My English is not very good, but I'm going to try my best.
Sure.
why that there's people, they are Muslims, and some of them they are non-Muslims. They say, but most of them they are Muslims. They say like, I've been searching to Islam. I read the Quran, I read the books of the Sunnah, Bukhari, Muslim. I search in the Quran everything, but it's unlogic. It's like a stupid thing, or it's not a logic religion, or you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So basically, why do they basically disbelieve, and why do they say it's illogical?
And there's some Muslims that they become, in the Arab country, they become atheists because they say like, I read the Quran, is unlogic, and the God is like a bad God, and he's not a good God, and something like that. So then they say, okay, I'm an ex-Muslim.
Yeah, the thing is, look, alhamdulillah, we have people who become Muslim, we have people who leave Islam. The Prophet ﷺ said people will enter Islam in crowds and leave Islam in crowds. The fact is, the Quran is a book of guidance and a book of misguidance. It guides the sincere and it misguides the insincere. It increases the disbelievers in their disbelief, and it increases the believers in their belief. So the first point, my brother, is it doesn't matter what people do. People doing a certain action doesn't mean it's more likely to be true or more likely to be false. There are people who are born, and I know of people like this, who are born in households in which believing would be impossible from a logical point of view. Their families are disbelievers, everyone's a disbeliever, and they turn out to be a Muslim. And I know, because the Quran tells us this, that the son of a prophet, born in that noble lineage, who sees his own father as a figure, he apostates from Islam. And we're talking about here Nuh alayhi salam's son. So what people do is not a yardstick. And what's very important is that we look at the truthfulness of Islam and the falsehood of disbelief, not at why are some people doing this and why are some people doing this, because Allah already gives us in the Quran an answer. The truth is from your Lord. Whoever wills, let him believe. Whoever wills, let him disbelieve. Why is this important? The reason why this is important is some people think just by being a Muslim who left Islam, you somehow have something important, like you've done something important. Or somebody who accepts Islam and were previously a disbeliever, that person, other people look at and they're like, oh my God, he's done something really important. The fact is, Allah guides and Allah misguides, and Allah guides those who deserve it. Allah misguides those who don't want guidance. Yes. So what people do should never be of any concern. In fact, our father Ibrahim alayhi salam, he was the only believer on earth. And if everybody on earth was a believer and he did not believe, it would not impact the truthfulness of Islam either. So the fact is, and this is a very common thing to fall into, what people do is totally irrelevant. And it doesn't show either way the truthfulness or the invalidity of Islam.
You know, to add to that, the Quran says, وَإِذَا مَا أُنزِلَتْ سُورَةٌ فَمِنْهُمْ مَنْ يَقُولُ أَيُّكُمْ زَادَتْهُ هَذِهِ إِيمَانًا فَأَمَّا الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا فَزَادَتْهُمْ إِيمَانًا. So this is in the end of Surah At-Tawbah. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, when a surah comes down, some of them used to say, which of you or whom of you has this surah increased in iman?
Yes.
So the ones who believe, they'll say, yes, it's increased us in belief. وَأَمَّا الَّذِينَ فِي قُلُوبِهِمْ مَرَضٌ. Except for, as for those individuals who had a marad in their qalb, فَزَادَتْهُمْ رِجَسًا إِلَى رِجِسِهِمْ وَمَاتُوا وَهُمْ كَافِرُونَ. So increase them impurity with the impurity they already had, and they will die when they're disbelievers. It's like when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, you know, إِنَّ اللَّهَ لَا يَسْتَحِي أَن يَضْرِبَ مَثَلًا مَا بَعُوضَةً فَمَا فَوْقَهَا. You know, Allah He's not shy to bring forward a parable of a fly, or even that which is smaller than. فَأَمَّا الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا فَيَعْلَمُونَ أَنَّهُ الْحَقُّ مِنْ رَبِّهِمْ as for those who believe, they know it's the truth from Allah, from their Lord. You know, and as for those who disbelieve, they say, what did Allah intend by this method, by this particular parable? And so everybody has, you know, you can look at it's basically like this, and maybe this is not a quote unquote logical way of answering this question. But if you have an attachment to God, if you actually love God, right, you're going to see all the good in the world, and you're going to attribute it to Him. And you're going to see all the bad, and you're going to attribute it to the fact that it's a test, and that you may even attribute it to yourself. So it's like if you love your father and someone says something bad of him, you're going to try and interpret it in your understanding, your paradigm of, oh, actually, my dad's a really good person, maybe he done this. But those atheists are kind of like those people who hate their parents, because anything that is said about them, they'll believe it. Anything that, even if it's not verified. And they attribute that kind of attitude, or they have the same kind of attitude, these anti-theists, to God and to religion in general. So anything that happens in the world, or why is God doing this? Or, you know, the Quran says, do people think that they will be left alone to, you know, just like that, and they will not be tested? They will say, I believe, and they will not be tested. So we have tested those who came before them, and so Allah will know the ones who are truthful among them, and He will know the ones who are liars.
Yes.
This world is a test at the end of the day. If there's an atheist out there, an anti-theist, and he's got these spectacles on, which he sees the world in opposition to God and in opposition to religion and all these kinds of things, فَزَادَتْهُمْ رِجْسًا إِلَى رِجْسِهِمْ, Allah's going to increase their impurity with the impurity they have already. It's going to be a snowball impurity situation. It's going to just get worse and worse for them. They're going to be strangling themselves with a longer rope. But as for those who believe, you know, it's going to be everything that comes down, everything that from the religious perspective, they're going to see it in the best presentation, in the best possible way, and they're going to die, inshallah, as believers. And that's a very key thing.
Absolutely. And I just want to thank everybody for joining the live stream. We've been getting this question a few times, and it's been coming up in previous live streams as well, which is, when is Mohammed Hijab going to be on the Joe Rogan podcast, inshallah? So guys, look, let me just give you a little opportunity here. Firstly, every single person should be in tune with the seerah, and they should understand the Prophet ﷺ. He went for the leaders, he went for the people of influence.
Somebody's saying I look like an elephant, but they're spelling elephant all wrong.
Yeah.
And it's not an elephant. It's like, look at this. Look at this. You wish you had this, huh? You wish you had that. Be quiet.
So when it comes to the leaders, the influencers, the tribal people in the past and today, it's influencers like Joe Rogan. So if you want to see Mohammed Hijab speaking to Joe Rogan, something very simple needs to take place, which inshallah you'll get the ajr for. There's 450 people roughly watching this right now. All you simply need to do is you simply need to tweet Joe Rogan, tweet Hijab, email Joe Rogan, and just say to him, you should speak to Hijab. If he got even 50 people saying to him, do this, he'll do the same thing that Connor did, message and say, okay, let's speak. And here's the thing which is very important, yeah? It's not about who the da'ya speaks to. It's about all the followers. It's not about it's the same reason with debates. You know, speaking to a particular person, it's not about the person, it's about it's social engineering. It's all the people watching. It's the impact it has. When it comes to Fir'aun and Musa, Allah knows that Musa is going to have a hard time with Fir'aun, and Fir'aun is somebody who's not going to accept the message. But who gets the message between these two opponents, and who acts upon the message? The audience. Some people from Fir'aun's side, some people from Musa alayhi salam's side. But both of them do not budge, but the people budge, and they go into different camps. So, if you really want something like that to happen, then take action to make it happen. Don't just assume it's going to happen, inshallah. Jazakallah khair, everybody, for watching this live stream. Every single Saturday, we will be live, inshallah, on Sapience Institute. And would you like to give some concluding thoughts?
No, I think it's a pleasure coming here and listening to some of your answers as well, because it increases my knowledge of especially like evolution, biology, and philosophy of science and biology. And generally, I think like just being of a high IQ person, you know, which I'm not used to being.
Ali Dawah's not here. Hamza's not here. Imran's not here. Actually, forget Imran.
Yes, it's always good, man. It's always good.
Yeah, no, alhamdulillah. It's always
been a
good,
pleasure
yeah.
as well. Like for those who have come and asked questions and shown their face and stuff like that, you know, it's been a pleasure to answer your questions and get your inputs as well.
May Allah bless you all. Assalamu alaikum.